If the Qur'an was the only thing, I have a video on this with Qur'an loaners. If you only looked at the Qur'an, based on the verse in the Qur'an 65:4, it would be permissible to have sex with minors. But what I'm saying is that we don't just take Qur'an. So we take Qur'an and Hadith. And as a result of that, because of the actions of the Prophet and his saying that you can't harm anyone, the jurists have said, for example, I've mentioned Mirdawi in his book Al-Insaf and his chapter of Hudud. He mentions anyone who has sex with someone who's under the age of puberty.
Within marriage, or it doesn't matter?
Yeah, within marriage. They're whipped.
Okay.
So in other words, they're flogged in public.
Yeah.
Now there's a question, the scholars, he said the Hanbali scholars, they differed. Some said that they are whipped and some said they're not whipped. The point is this, is that why is he talking about punishment in marriage? So this is something.
Let's just process what this guy just spoke about. The famous, well-known Muhammad Hijab, the Salafist, the cowboy Salafist, which I call cowboy Salafist, although he's apparently from Britain. He makes the claim that if you go by the Qur'an alone, if you throw away the Hadith or if you ignore the Hadith, then you have to believe that sex with a minor, with a 5-year-old, with a 4-year-old, subhanAllah, would be permissible. Now, you know what? He uses what is so slanderous and so defaming from this absolute, unenlightened and ignorant person, or dogmatic, I would say, this dogmatic person, is that he will slander the Qur'an, he will slander the Prophet in order to rescue the Hadith. You will slander the Qur'an. In other words, the Qur'an on its own would permit sex with children, because that's a lie, and he uses a verse. The thing is, he actually uses a verse to slander the Qur'an, and the verse he uses is chapter 65 verse 4, and that makes it our business. You know, we people want to defend the honor of the Nabi of Allah, the Qur'an, the message of Allah. We need to come to the defense. We need to speak up against the shayateen who are there to destroy and disrupt the crystal clear message of the Qur'an. Now let me show you the verse. Let's show you the verse. Qur'an 65 verse 4. And the verse speaks about the obligatory pause between marriages, or after a woman becomes a widow. So there's an obligatory pause in relationships, in sex, in marriage, that the Quran prescribes, right? It's 3 months, generally 4 months in the case of a widow. And so let's just look at this, and this is the verse that Muhammad Hijab slanders and claims that this verse says that you can have sex with a child. Look at this verse. This verse says, وَاللَّائِ يَئِسْنَ مِنَ الْمَحِيضِ مِنْ نِسَائِكُمْ إِنِ ارْتَبْتُمْ فَعِدَّتُهُنَّ ثَلَاثَةُ أَشْهُرٍ. Such of your women as have passed the age of monthly courses. Now, this is talking about the monthly period of women. For them, the prescribed period. So, the verse, in fact, addresses women who are not experiencing a monthly period, right? So this verse addresses those categories of women. And what he does is he claims that the second case here, for the first case that it raises, is that for women who are past the normal period, right? They having their period. In other words, women who are beyond the menstruation, right? They are absolved, and they should simply use 3 months for their pause or for their iddah, right? If you have doubts, 3 months. And for those who have no causes, so that's the line that he really comes and claims that means children. Subhanallah. That is the line that he claims is children. But the Arabic is Wallahi lam yahidna. That is the Arabic. Wallahi lam yahidna. Now the meaning of lam yahidna, I'm not even an Arab. This guy's an Arab and he's so stupid. You know, the little bit I know about Arabic is that lam doesn't mean not yet. It just means not. Those who have not experienced the hayd. Now what hijab does is, he translates it as for those who have not yet experienced menstruation. That is his false translation where he slanders the book. He translates wala'i lam yahidna to those who have not yet experienced. And so he says this verse actually allows for children to be having sex. Subhanallah, this is such slander on the amazing and noble word of God. Now I've just done the effort and I've looked at translation on Google. What does it say? Lam yadhhabun. Lam yadhhabun. They didn't go. Simple. I mean, anyone can type that into Google. Lam yadhhabun simply means they didn't go. And so if I apply the same to lam yahidna, it simply means they have not had courses. They have not had their monthly courses or their menstrual period. And it simply means that if for whatever reason a woman who is expecting to have a period does not have a period. Now that could be due to pregnancy, that could be due to various reasons. Of course there are going to be a case where there is a divorce or there is a death and the woman has for 2 months not experienced. Right now during COVID, people who have taken the vaccine are experiencing a lapse in the women who have taken the vaccine experience a pause or a lapse in a period. In fact, if you look at the word amenorrhea, it is actually a technical term in the medical world that refers to absence or missed menstruation after normal menstrual cycle. So amenorrhea can be caused by low body weight, excessive exercise, mental stress, eating problems such as anorexia, pregnancy, hormonal imbalance. And so the verse here is simply accommodating all the cases. The verse is accommodating the case of people beyond menstruation, people who are still within the age of menstruation but are not menstruating due to whatever reason, and one of the reasons could be amenorrhea, and for those who are carrying a baby. So obviously pregnant women are also, so this covers the complete. Isn't it amazing how the Qur'an has actually covered all the cases, amazingly, of women who might not be menstruating as usual. And so this verse came to say that to offer, because the normal iddah would be related to the menstrual period. But this verse came to say when there is no menstrual courses, then the iddah would be different. And so this guy, this foolish man, he comes with his false story.
Of that, because of the actions of the Prophet and his saying that you can't harm anyone, the jurists have said, for example, I've mentioned like
he
the
comes,
So it expects extra
right.
cases.
So what you need elaboration. That's why I say to Quran alone. I actually made this argument that you're making. I said that if you only took a Quranic understanding, then it would be permissible for you to have sex with minors.
Subhanallah.
The only way to get away from that is to have hadith expansion. If you only took the Quran, you're right. If the Quran was the only thing, I have a video on this with Quran aloners. If you only looked at the Quran based on the verse in the Quran 65:4,
65:4, this verse which is misreading, which is misrepresenting, and I wish I could tell him that those who misrepresent the word of God is created for hell, will burn in hell. And that is exactly what he's doing. Because I am not even an Arab, and I can tell you, lam yahidna does not mean has not yet had a period. It means has not had a period. As I've shown you in a simple Google Translate exercise, the simplest sentence, lam yadhhabun, would be equivalent to that. And so he's misrepresenting that. But more importantly, I think, is why are these fools, and this guy's got millions of people watching his videos, why are these fools lying about the child, the Quran speaking about marrying children? You see, for them to accept that the Prophet did not marry a child, they have to reject the hadith by Aisha. They have to reject that hadith. And to reject the hadith by Aisha, it means that you have to cast doubt on one of the biggest narrators of hadith, because Aisha is one of the top 3 narrators of hadith. They will never touch Abu Huraira, they will never touch al-Mu'mineen Aisha, and they will never touch, I think, Anas bin Malik. I'm not sure now, Mas'ud, but there's another, the third one. And they will never touch those people, right? By chance, 2 of them, Aisha, al-Mu'mineen Aisha and Abu Huraira, were 2 enemies of Sayyidina Ali, of the movement of the family of the Prophet, which was basically the anti-establishment movement for the first 60 years after Hijrah, and until they were crushed at Karbala. The family of the Prophet led the anti-establishment, anti-sultan movement for those 50 years after the Prophet. But also, let me just finalize this by pointing it to a video. So there's a new video out, and there's a beautiful video by the impactful scholar, where he actually states that there's some new research, and maybe
Medina
you can just watch this quickly.
Iraq, to the city of Kufa, and that's when he forged, he determines his conclusion is that it, where we think this hadith may have originated from. And once he does this, and he honestly refines the methodology, advances hadith studies from that perspective, he determines his conclusion is that it was originated or fabricated. Those are the words that he used. He says it was fabricated whole cloth, in fact, by Hisham ibn Urwa in the 8th century in Iraq. That was when he moved from Medina to Iraq, to the city of Kufa. And that's when he forged or fabricated this hadith. Thereafter, it became very prevalent, and then it's found in many classical Islamic sources. But what he notices is that this report is absent from some key legal and biographical sources in the early period, especially in these Medinan sources in which you would...
Okay, he's talking about the hadith that speaks about the Prophet marrying Aisha at the age of 6, of course.
Expect this report to be found if it indeed was historical. So, for example, he notes that it's not in Imam Malik's Al-Muwatta, it's not in Al-Mudawwana, and these are some texts in which you would really expect this sort of report to be in. Whether or not the author or the compiler considered it reliable or not, that report's not even found in those. There's just complete silence.
Okay, so I think let me just add to what this guy is saying, because this guy, what he's saying is that he's going by a thesis that was written recently that debunks the hadith as a fake invention, as a fabrication, as a false attribution to the Prophet's life. And but I think, just to summarize, the problem is not with one hadith. The problem is that if somebody urinates in a jar or in a jug of water and tells you that it's fine, the urination is only 1% of the water, will you still drink that water? You see, poison does not require all the hadiths to be false. What we need to do is declare a blanket ban on using hadith to base any religious or divine law on. We need a moratorium on hadith, and then we can take our time to filter through the hadiths and see which of those hadiths are in alignment with the Qur'an, are in alignment with what is rational, what is logical, what is sound, and what makes sense. But in the meantime, we need for Islam to move forward, to stop the slander of the Prophet. We need that moratorium on using hadith as divine law. Hadith is not divine law. Hadith is a contaminated body of literature. It is like urinating in a bottle of drinking water. You cannot drink that water. That water has been poisoned.